House Judiciary Committee member and, well, the man who will lead the questioning for Lisa Page later today, John Ratcliffe, the Republican with me from Texas. And, sir, good morning to you. Before we talk about what is expected later today here in the U.S. and on Capitol Hill, just reflect right now on what you're hearing out of England and this relationship with Theresa May and where we are right now with NATO. What is your feeling? What is your feeling here now?
Well, I think that Donald Trump is doing the things over in Europe that we've seen him do here in the United States, which is break up the status quo. I think most Americans are glad to see a president standing up for America, putting America first on the world stage, even with some of our allies who maybe haven't treated us perfectly fairly, as the president would say. And so, you know, all of this is a negotiation, though, that ultimately I think will put the United States on a level playing field with all of our partners around the world. So I'm pleased with what he's done, and I'm excited about what he's about to do. Do
you believe there is any doubt in Vladimir Putin's mind on Monday that NATO is aligned together and is as strong, if not stronger, as the president would describe a moment ago?
I think that he probably thinks that, but I think the bigger takeaway is that Vladimir Putin will say Donald Trump is leading and making the decisions there, and that if he wants a good relationship, he's going to have to deal with Donald Trump, and that his voice is the strongest and most important, and it's not other European powers that have traditionally been able to guide NATO that are going to be making the call from this point forward.
He talked about that pipeline. Germany is entering in that contract. It's not built yet, but it's en route as we see the aerial pictures of the protesters in central London, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, their local time. He called it a tragedy and a horrible thing. What do you think?
I think that's the art of the deal. I think that Donald Trump approaches negotiations that in a way that has made him successful and has ultimately brought him to be the President of the United States. And I think that as he has approached negotiations so far in the first year and a half of his presidency, I think it's hard to argue with the results. America is doing better than it has in a long, long time, domestically and abroad, and I trust the president's judgment on these issues.
What a week it's been, really, as we continue to watch these live pictures in London, Congressman. You saw the beginning of the week transition into this visit in the UK, and now we await the president's one-on-one with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki on Monday. And the president just weighed in specifically on what he wants to talk to Vladimir Putin about: Ukraine, Syria, Middle East, nuclear proliferation. That would be a tremendous achievement, he said. Meddling, absolutely, he'll bring it up. Doesn't think there'll be a Perry Mason moment. What are your expectations for that summit?
Well, I think what's interesting here is that people are going to get to see whether or not the Democrats and what they've been asserting about Donald Trump being Vladimir Putin's puppet are really true. And as we say in East Texas, hide and watch. I think at the end of the day, Donald Trump has made the message very clear that we have the ability to bring the Russian economy to its knees with respect to who provides natural gas to the Europeans and other decisions around the world. And I expect the president to flex his muscle with respect to that to Vladimir Putin in a way that the world will respect.
What is interesting about the meeting on Monday is that you have these shadow universes right now. Almost in a way they're running in a parallel sense, because you're going to have a discussion on Monday about the Russian meddling, and you just had this hearing that went on for 10 hours yesterday, and a hearing that will continue today behind closed doors, because you've been looking for the testimony on behalf of Lisa Page, and today apparently you will get it. It's scheduled for 1 o'clock, 1:30 this afternoon. Are you confident she will show today, sir?
I am. This will be her third and last opportunity to comply with a congressional subpoena that was issued earlier. I fully expect her to appear today. I will tell you that if she doesn't, we will move forward with contempt proceedings against her later this afternoon. But I expect that she'll be there. I don't want the drama. I want the information that she has. I want to go through the text messages, not in a circus environment like we had yesterday, but behind closed doors, and get important information that will help us get to the bottom of what the American people are asking for.
Understood, and maybe we'll get a readout later as to what you learned in that closed session with Lisa Page today. What do you think yesterday accomplished with Peter Strzok?
Well, you know, it's easy to lose the forest for the trees, Bill, in a circus atmosphere. But I think the most important thing that we learned, the most important takeaway was yesterday, the American people got to see Bob Mueller's star witness. We can talk about investigations in the past, but the investigation that's in the front windshield for most Americans is the special counsel probe. And Peter Strzok has to be Bob Mueller's star witness. I say that because Peter Strzok is the one that was in charge of the Trump-Russia investigation for the first year that became the special counsel probe. He did the investigative plan. He started the investigation. He gathered all of the evidence. And so ultimately, his credibility is of primary importance. Now, there were apparently two different Peter Strzok's testifying yesterday. The one that the Democrats questioned was a patriot and a hero and someone deserving of a Purple Heart. The Peter Strzok that I question is the one that has been demoted by the FBI, is being investigated by the FBI for sending 50,000 text messages that say, F Trump, I hate Trump, impeach Trump, stop Trump, Trump should lose 100 million to zero, but none of that is bias against Trump. I don't find that credible, and if most American people don't find that credible, then Bob Mueller's going to have a real credibility problem with respect to his conclusions that are based upon all of the evidence collected by Peter Strzok.
You know, we'll get back to this in just a second, Congressman Ratcliffe, but I want to bring everybody's attention to the screen here because we continue to show live shots as you've been speaking about, obviously, the very fiery exchanges we saw on Capitol Hill yesterday. But there are multiple organized protests happening in the streets of London right now. As Bill mentioned, 3 o'clock local time in the afternoon. London time, most of these started around 11 o'clock in the morning. The president has responded to what he's seen so far, saying he feels unwelcome. These are anti-Trump protests filling the streets. They're against the president's policies, they say. There's even an orange Trump balloon that has been floating around the streets of London. And if I could, Congressman Ratcliffe, have you, I don't know that you can see what we're seeing right now, but it's tens of thousands of protesters is about all we can tell you at this point, filling the streets there. If you could just weigh in on what we're seeing.
Well, Sandra, those don't look much different like the protests that Donald Trump saw the day he got sworn into office in this country. You know, that's what happens when you're trying to break up the status quo, when you take on the establishment, and when you try and change the things about government that people have hated for decades and decades. And again, I think, you know, we should all really give President Trump credit for his willingness to take that on, and in the face of those kinds of protests, to do the things he said he would do, to keep the promises he said he would keep. And he's trying to do that in Europe today, and he's been trying to do that here in the United States for the last year and a half.
Has he been successful with his attempts so far?
What more do people want? We have an American economy that is booming. We have unemployment at an all-time low. We have more Americans keeping more of their paychecks in their bank accounts. And on the world stage, we finally see people standing up for America saying, we're not going to give money to countries that hate us. And we're seeing our allies realize that we have a president who's not going to let the playing field be tilted in their advantage. So the Americans that I know and most of the folks that I represent are behind Donald Trump and the things that he's doing.
When he talked about the witch hunt, the rigged witch hunt, and how it damages the U.S. at home and abroad, well, what is your perspective on that, sir, when you think about these high-level meetings, these people in the streets, the reflection on the U.S., and especially when you consider criticism stops at the borders, but apparently that's not the case in today's modern-day politics?
Well, you know, I haven't used the term witch hunt, but I agree with the president that it's been the better part of 2 years where we've heard that there's evidence of collusion with Russia. And as Bill and Sandra, you both know, I've been behind closed doors. I've seen all the classified documents that any other member of Congress has seen, and I haven't seen any evidence of collusion with Russians with Donald Trump or anyone associated with him. So for him to be tired of this and not want it to be a distraction, listen, it's all the Democrats have left. They keep saying, let Bob Mueller's special counsel probe continue. I don't know why they want it to continue. 62 Democrats have already have signed on to vote to impeach Donald Trump already. So why do they need Bob Mueller to finish his investigation? They've already made up their mind.
As far as the president on the world stage, as you just referenced it, you referenced the success that you see the president having here at home. What about on the world stage? This has been a huge week for this presidency, Congressman.
It's been a huge week, but it follows other huge weeks. Let's not lose sight of the fact that there was just a meeting with the North Korean dictator about denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula, something that Republican and Democrat administrations have failed to do for the last few decades. Donald Trump is doing things that haven't been done before. Yes, it's unconventional. Yes, it's unorthodox. But the results have been good for America.
And as we continue to look on at these live protests in the streets of London, here was the moment, Congressman, a short time ago when the president and Theresa May, the prime minister, were conducting a bilateral news conference. They answered several questions from reporters all over the world. And, of course, one of the leadoff questions was, what about that Sun report yesterday where the president appeared to be criticizing the prime minister? And here's how the president responded to that moments ago.
I didn't criticize the prime minister. I have a lot of respect for the prime minister. And unfortunately, there was a story that was done, which was, generally fine, but it didn't put in what I said about the prime minister. And I said tremendous things. And fortunately, we tend to record stories now, so we have it for your enjoyment if you'd like it. But we record when we deal with reporters. It's called fake news.
He did follow that up, Congressman, by saying that he's got the highest level of special as he looks on at Theresa May and her country.
Well, I think this is just another chapter of, we keep seeing where some in the fake news want to say that he's diminishing America's place in the world. But you hear these world leaders come out after and say that they respect him and that they like him. Listen, he gives the unvarnished truth. Sometimes he's not as diplomatic as even I would like. But at the end of the day, again, you have to look at the results and whether or not he's accomplishing the things that he said he would do for us as Americans first. And he is.
John Ratcliffe, thank you for your time. Our headliner today
You
from
bet.
Capitol Hill.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Lisa Page, again, what time? Is it 1? Is it 1:30? Can you confirm?
1:30.
Okay. And how long do you expect that to go today?
It's going to go as long as she's willing to stay, and then it's going to continue on Monday. But it's important because we'll get the other side of the coin. We'll get the other half of the conversation from those text messages. And ultimately, we'll report to the American people what she says.
Thank you, sir. John Ratcliffe, the Republican from Texas, leading the question this afternoon.